Hello, welcome back to A Course in Miracles. Now, if you are tuning in from the YouTube channel for Enlightened World Network, the show is A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. And I want to pay special attention to the subtitle, the tagline, Awakening to Love, because that's what we're talking about today. So whether you've joined me from my own YouTube channel or from Enlightened World Network, thank you as always for tuning in. And I don't say that just purely from the standpoint of, hey, thanks for clicking on my YouTube channel and subscribing. Right? Not from that standpoint purely, but what I'm more grateful for is your interest and your practice. The fact that you're answering the call, even if you don't feel like you've answered it yet, the fact that you're interested in this material is in fact answering the call. What you choose to do with it is up to you. We can delay as long as we want, and that's what we do in the world. Every time we side for the ego, every time we attack someone, every time we lash out in judgment or blame, whether the other person or people ever know we're doing it or not, right? That's what we do. But you're on the path, so to speak, and the very fact that you're interested in A Course in Miracles, the very fact that you're interested in non-dual spirituality tells me quite a lot, and I thank you for that. Now, on the spiritual path, our job is not just to understand things on an intellectual level. That's, yeah, it's important, but that's not where the real action lies. It lies in your application, in practicing the thought system of A Course in Miracles. The question then becomes, how forgiving are you willing to become? Are you willing to forgive everything and everyone, including yourself? Right now, in the present moment, are you becoming more loving? And this is really an interesting question, because whatever your spiritual practice has looked like, whenever you started the tradition or traditions that you're currently working with, it's really easy to assess what we in the world call progress, isn't it? It's really easy to take a look, a chronological look at where you were when you began and where are you today. Are you more loving? Are you more relaxed? Are you more chill? Maybe. Do you have more patience? Have you noticed yourself not judging as often, not blaming as often? Have you noticed yourself accepting responsibility for your own experience? Those are good questions that you can use to gauge the impact of your practice. Now, moment to moment, everything's going to be different looking. Some days are better than others. And we could be looking at flying into a fit of rage at some point this afternoon, hope not, right? But these things kind of come up. We have moments, and some days, some moments are better than others. Some are more difficult seeming than others. So I invite you to, on the path, always forgive yourself. We sometimes, and you may be one of these people. Oh, yes, you may. You may be one of these people that find it very easy to forgive someone else's behavior and impossible almost to forgive your own. No, forgive yourself as well. This is, as we see here in the thought system of A Course in Miracles, when you forgive someone else, you're forgiving yourself. There's no separation of any kind. It would be very kind and very helpful of you to deliberately extend this forgiveness to yourself. Please don't neglect that component. I know a lot of you want to. Don't. You know why. You do, you know. Nobody has to tell you. Just sometimes a reminder every now and then is really helpful, huh? Yeah. So, lesson 323, this is all about awakening to love. And of course, it is a derivative of the last lesson, which was lesson 322. I know, right? Yeah. Funny how that works. So, in the last video, lesson 322, I can give up, but what was never real. In other words, I can only give up what was never real and there in the first place. That was the last idea. Now, today's idea, lesson 323, I gladly make the sacrifice of fear. I gladly make the sacrifice of fear. Now, Jesus puts sacrifice in quotation marks. The so-called sacrifice. Oh yeah, I gradually, or gradually. Well, you can do it gradually. You can do it right away. Right now, there is only the present moment after all. I gladly make the so-called sacrifice of fear. I gladly make the perceived, supposed sacrifice of fear. I gladly let it go. What happens when we let fear go? What happens when we let all of our delusions go? When we simply set them to the side, which is what Jesus is inviting us to do. What happens then? Only love remains. We never see the fear again when we truly set it aside. If you want a visual analogy, love is a light. It's a light switch that you turn on. What happens when you turn on a light switch in a dark room? The darkness is gone. It instantly disappears, and it's as though it were never there. Boom. And assuming that you have formulated the determination that the workbook talks about, above all else, I want to see. Assuming you want to see, you can leave the light on. It's all there is. The darkness is gone. So as we discover through experience and sometimes painful trial and error, because, well, that's the way we roll on the path, is that we don't have to actually make an opponent of this fear. We don't have to set it up as something or someone that's in opposition to ourselves. There is only love. When we let fear go, only love remains. And what we're doing on the spiritual path is awakening to love. We're allowing it to simply be as it is, which, by the way, is as it's always been and always will be. It's eternal. It's present. It is. It simply is. And what we're doing is we're peeling back the layers that keep us from realizing this, that keep us from knowing who we really are, experientially knowing, beyond knowledge, beyond words. Yes, in the world, we use them to communicate. I'm using them to communicate with you because this is what human beings recognize. Words and videos, pictures on the internet. What you're looking at is simply an image, isn't it? It's simply a visual image that your eyes are reporting back to you. But what's really going on is there's a message being communicated on a much deeper level that you who you really are. You can call it your spirit, soul, whatever language you want to use, that you deep down recognize. This is the same message that we all deep down recognize that is there underneath, behind, whatever preposition you want to use, on the other side of all of the drama, all of the psychodrama, all the bullshit that we put ourselves through day in and day out in the world, in what we call regular, ordinary, everyday life. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Underneath all of that is this same message. This is why you know that there's more to your experience than simply checking your email. There's something else. There's something larger, greater, bigger than yourself, little KSS, of course. Yeah, the ego does not, in fact, exist. This message is the message of love that you're hearing on a level that you might not even be conscious of. So now, if you have begun to acknowledge your teacher role in the world, keep showing up and teaching, because you never know who needs to hear your message. This is the reason why I continue to show up and deliver these messages. Now, the message obviously operates on many different levels, doesn't it? There's this soul level, so to speak, this spirit level, this core essential level of the message. It's not me, Tomas Garza, talking to you at all. It's not this thing that you see talking to you, and every level in between where it looks like it is. So accepting your function as a so-called teacher does not necessarily mean that you have to hold yourself out, as I do, as a spiritual teacher, as a spiritual guide, or a minister, or a lama, or a rabbi, an imam, anything like that. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is that people are always learning from you. You're always learning from them. We're always learning from each other. We're always in communication. How do we know that deep down? There's only one of us. There's only oneness. So of course, oneness is in communication with oneness on a level that totally transcends words. It cannot, in fact, be understood intellectually, but it's important here in the world that we use our words. It's like getting in trouble as a kid, isn't it? Use your words. Don't throw a tantrum. Use your words. Quit flopping on the floor. Right? It's important that we use our words to point. This is what I do as a teacher, as a messenger, is I point. It's what you do. Now, you don't have to hold yourself out as a teacher, because people are learning from you anyway. How do you show up? Are you more forgiving? Are you more loving? Are you exuding a presence that is loving, forgiving, kind, patient? And that's the moment-to-moment question for all of us. If you are, you'll know, they'll know, everyone will know. Your entire experience will change. It will be different. This is what happens when we choose love. This is what happens, in Course in Miracles terminology, when we choose the strength of Christ. what happens is you show up differently and it feels differently, doesn't it? If you have experienced this, you will know it feels very differently. And then naturally, we formulate the wish to continue with joy and boundlessness because it feels better than flying into a fit of rage. Now we catch ourselves all the time, don't we? Lapsing back into judgment and blaming other people, blaming the government, blaming the weather for our ills. But in reality, spirituality is about maturity. It really is, because this component that's essential of accepting responsibility for our own experience, we are making our own experience. We are. Mind is that powerful. So it's beginning to recognize that we do here along the path. Now, that could be a very gradual process. It could be a process, and it is for almost all of us, that's littered with stops and starts, where some days we don't want to meditate. We don't want to pray. We literally want to say, fuck this, it's not worth it. But it is. It is worth it, isn't it? Just know that these days are going to come, and the message that I want to convey on that is forgive yourself. Do not forget to forgive yourself. A peaceful mind is a mind that has forgiven itself. Know that when you do that, it's forgiving everyone else. Why? No separation. So allow this communication to happen, not just the communication in words on YouTube and in written comments and all of the things that we see on the internet. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you're watching this, but on a broader standpoint than just subscribing to the channel and registering clicks that people can quantify and look and see, ooh, this person's really popular, or this person must really suck, no one's watching their shit, right? Now, beyond that, it's what you're doing in your experience, right? It's your practice, it's your commitment, it's your own awakening to love. That's what I appreciate more than anything else, because the more that we all do that, the more loving the world is, right? The sooner we awaken, the sooner we experience what we're destined to experience, and that is the peace of God. All right, so happy practicing today, as always. And well, I'll be seeing you here as we continue through part 2 of the workbook, and it's some very, very powerful stuff. All right, guys, with questions, comments, feel welcome to leave them here on YouTube or email. Tomas@tomasgarza.com is a good email address for that. And if you've got questions, I'll answer them specifically. In fact, I'll even do a video for this series, if you'd like me to, specifically on your question. I encourage that, actually, before we wrap up here, I encourage that because you never know. Like I said earlier, you never know who's going to hear that, who's going to need your message, right? Who's going to be really glad that you asked the question. There's no such thing as a dumb question on the spiritual path. And there's nothing lost by asking, right? Except maybe some fear in the ego about that. Yeah. You never know who needs to hear your question. It is kind of like being a student in a classroom, and we've all experienced this, where the teacher says something, guides you down one passage, and it feels like a blind alley, and you and probably 10 other people, 15 other people in the class don't really understand it. one person has the courage to raise their hand and ask the question, and then you get this palpable sigh of relief where people go, oh yeah, right? Have you ever been the person to ask that question? And also, have you ever been the person to express relief that someone asked? You could be the person that asks and create this ripple effect of relief and happiness all over the world for people whom you'll never meet. It's one of the beauties of the technology that we have. We can reach people faster. So let's reach them, please, with a message of love. There's plenty of other separation messages out there. So forgive, 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 and I'll see you again soon.